It's been several years now. I had a great aunt, and she cooked really good Brunswick stew. So that's how I got started. And I remembered how good it was and how she done it from scratch. First, you take a Boston butt and you either bake it or you boil it and you let it cook for a while. I like my meat to like just fall apart, and it's really tender that way. Well, and then my aunt, she would like have that old-timey grinder that you hook to the cabinet, and she would put the meat in there and grind it up, which some people don't like it tasting like baby food, so they like it chunky. So this part is not ground down like I usually like it, but that's cool too. So when you get your Boston butt, you cook it, you let it rest where it's not so hot. You chop it up, and then you go and that's your meat.
How do you prefer yours? Do you prefer it baked or boiled?
Really, it doesn't matter. To me, it's good either way. It just depends on the person. But sometimes when they have these fundraisers and they sell butts, they're already cooked, and that's really cool. But it already has a flavor to it. This has its own flavor.
So where did you get the meat for today from?
This is from the Rusty Pig.
Okay.
And it's very good. So sometimes when we have extra meat, we put it in the freezer and bring it out to do different things.
And we let Mary make us Brunswick stew.
That's right, that's right. So first what I do is I get my ingredients out. I have my meat, I have onion, I use tomatoes.
And these are from Futch Farms?
Futch Farms. These are fresh tomatoes, and they are really good. They've got really good vegetables. I grind up my tomatoes, and this is how I do it. My faithful Mr. Oscar, you just put it in there.
How old is Mr. Oscar?
Well, you see, Mr. Oscar is yellow a little bit, but yeah, it's years. I think my kids were little when I got this.
Mr. Oscar looks like he's from the 70s.
Yes. He may be from the 60s. I think the 70s may be generous.
No, he's a little bit, he's probably the 80s. But yeah, 80s or 90s. But this is a faithful little machine here. But I chop up all of my tomatoes in there, and I like it to where it's not chunky, because to me it's just better. My dad, when he made his was always chunky. But I have 2 cans of cream corn, and if you want to use fresh corn, that's cool, but it's still the equivalent like 2 cans of whole kernel corn. And I do potatoes. So I have my potatoes already diced up. I'm going to pour the water off so we can boil it. Some people put theirs in there and let it cook, but it takes a little longer. And, you got to make sure they're tender.
Nice.
So I'm going to pour out the excess water so we can get it boiling. So, put this
Alright, so we're gonna drain the potatoes.
Yes. And I'm putting it in here to let it start. And all I did to that is put a little bit of salt in it.
Okay.
Not a whole lot, but so we're gonna turn this on. I always cook it slow. I never cook it fast because you got to be careful. You'll scorch it. So what I do is I chopped up an onion, and really it depends on what your preference is. But you chop your onion up real nice, and it goes everywhere on the thing. But when you chop it up, I went and sauteed it first last night before I did anything else.
All right, for our Facebook viewers, we are back. Sorry, we had a technical difficulty. So, Mary, what have we done since I was out? We drained potatoes and we put them in a pot, or we put them in a pot to boil.
Right.
Okay.
Because that saves time when you do that. But like I said, some people, they they put their potatoes already in, you know, in there with it cooking, but it takes a minute for them to get tender. So,
You're chopping up an onion.
yes,
Okay.
put this in our pot. I've already turned it on. Finished doing my onion.
You're using a whole onion,
Yes.
and it's a Vidalia onion, right?
Very good. And my onion wants to go all over the
Well,
place.
keep your fingers on your hands. I don't want that kind of Brunswick stew.
No, we don't have extra meat in it. But I'll do the onion first, and then I add the meat. Next will be the meat.
And you're gonna saute the onions?
Yeah, I like to saute it just a little bit. I mean, like, every person's Brunswick stew is different. It's the person. So,
And your recipe was developed from your aunts, just with your own spin.
yeah, and you know, you taste other people's Brunswick stew, and what you do is you just get a flavor. You know, you get that in your mind, and you think of other things you could do to make it better or whatever. Let me just, I'll put
Beth is cool on Periscope says hi.
who?
Just say hey.
Hi. Okay.
People are sending you hearts.
And we have the heat turned up to what, Mary?
Right now, I've turned it up to about medium, number 5. But like I said, once this sautés a little bit, and I mean, you know, you really don't have to, but I did it last night and it turned out pretty good. But you just let it saute for just a little bit, and it just gets a little tender, give it a little taste or whatever. And then of course our potatoes are back there trying to do something.
And it's worthwhile to boil the potatoes so you don't have to wait as long for the stew
Right.
to cook.
Right, because it, like I said, I've done it both ways. I've put my potatoes in there, and it takes a minute for it to, you know, to get tender. And I'm not very patient when it comes to having to wait for the potatoes, so I thought boiling them, you know, that would be a lot better. And
So up to this point, we've taken tomatoes and we've crushed them in Mr. Oscar, which is just a really old name for a food processor.
yes, it is. Yes, it is.
And we have corn that we've shucked and taken off the cobs. And then for the things you had to purchase, you had to buy 2 cans of cream corn.
Cream corn.
Okay.
And of course, Joey's favorite. These are the can of peas that he prefers.
And who's Joey?
My son.
For people who don't know.
My son. So, and they are my worst critic. But anyway,
We are, for those of you on Periscope, we are cooking Brunswick Stew, which is a classic southern dish.
very much so.
And Beth is cool has sent you lots and lots of hearts.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'm not going to do it as saute all that, you know, much like I did last night, because we're going to go ahead and, you know,
Keep the process going.
yes, it's not like we have days for this, which it
But you
usually
said
takes
sauteing
days.
the onions was not a mandatory thing. It's just something that you preferred.
Yeah, I did that last night.
No, that was a gallon-sized bag of chopped pork,
Mm-hmm.
and that's your preference.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, you know, if you do a Boston butt, you put in, once you cut it up, you usually have enough that you can have barbecue for the side, and then you have stuff for your Brunswick stew. But it also depends on how much meat you like. Some people like it really meaty, you know. But we put our onions in there, our meat in there, and then faithful Mr. Oscar, we start pouring in our tomatoes. And I have the other over here.
And it looks like our potatoes are boiling too.
Yes.
So those are crushed tomatoes, or those are
These were the diced tomatoes,
Okay.
but I put them in Mr. Oscar.
okay?
And then as you do it, you just keep stirring it, because if you don't, it will scorch. Like I said, I try to get it to where it starts cooking, and then I turn it down. And
Sorry. This is a process that takes days.
yes, yeah, because it's like I said, when I cook my Boston butt, I still wait, and then I start doing this. But see, like, I might let it cook all day, and then put it in the crock pot and just turn it on low and let it cook all night, and then it's really good like that. Now, you can add more tomato sauce in there, tomatoes in there. Some people like it like that, but you really can't tell what it looks like till it starts cooking. And it kind of looks like you put water in it, but I don't put water in it. This is all I do as far as that. But with how much meat you have, that's what you want to go with.
Okay.
Have whole kernel corn. I have 2. You would do 2 cans, or either, it just depends on how much corn you want in there, you know. I do that. And usually with a bigger pot of like the tomatoes and stuff like that, it just gives it some good flavor.
So Shazam 100 is asking, what are we eating this with? And Brunswick Stew usually you can just eat by itself.
Right.
Or it's good with cornbread.
It is. It's good with, well, when you have barbecue, you have Brunswick Stew, and usually potato salad.
I really think that's the way Brunswick Stew started.
It's kind of like leftovers.
Leftover barbecue. Yeah.
Right, right.
It's your opportunity to not have to throw stuff away, and people in the 20s and 30s in the South were very thrifty.
Yes, and they used anything they had in their kitchen, you know, even their kitchen sink sometimes.
So you just put the whole can of cream corn in there?
And it, like, you know, it doesn't matter which one you go with. Del Monte is good. I mean, you know.
A lot of times now you'll see Brunswick Stew just as part of a meal.
Yes.
I prefer it on its own. I agree with you. But sometimes people just have it as a side dish.
Yeah, I've been to a lot of barbecue places like that. It'll be like, you have your barbecue and then whatever side item, and the Brunswick Stew is a side.
Exactly, and that's cool too, but I just rather have it, I like having it as a meal by itself.
Yes, anytime, I agree.
And you can see how chunky the meat is. For some of my fellow people that like meat that's chunky in their stew.
Do you prefer to do it a different way other than chunky?
Yes, that's where Mr. Oster comes in, and I grind it down, and it's just really kind of, I guess people say baby food, but anyway.
You may have an unhealthy obsession with Mr. Oscar.
Mr. Oscar has been good to me all these years. So I let it cook for a little bit, and when that gets to cooking, when the potatoes get done, I will put them in here, and you let it cook. But like I said, you just keep an eye on your temperature, because once it starts coming, you'll see it bubbling, and once it starts, keep stirring it, because like I said, you'll have to turn it down because it will scorch.
This is a really slow stove, so the likelihood that it's going to boil anytime soon is probably slim to none.
Right, and that's the reason we have an after rate, you know. But anyway, and I use the peas goes in after the potatoes.
They don't get crushed.
Right, and when you get to stirring it a lot, you don't want them. You want to see those peas.
Yeah.
You know.
So the potatoes, do we go until they're almost done, like they're really getting soft, or how far do you usually? You
can do either way. It's what you prefer, but like I said, it just saves time when you do it that way. But
potatoes are boiling right now.
And all I do, as far as I just use salt. I don't use any other ingredients, no spices, just that. And
that's your very technical measurement there.
Yes.
So let us see roughly how much we've done that. This will be the second time.
Right, and that's a little bit smaller. But then after it gets to cooking, you'll know if you need to put more in it. But other than that, I don't put a whole lot in there because the meat and the the tomatoes and the cream corn and corn with all of it, it makes its own flavor, and that's how you get that good taste. I mean, we tasted plenty of barbecue and Brunswick stew in our time, and so everybody's different. But to me, you know, I think it's cooler when you just don't put a whole lot of spices in it because you're taking away from your Brunswick stew.
Yeah.
But everybody's different. Some people put the green lima beans or, you know, in there, or butter beans. They put them in there. I don't do that. I just put the little peas. But I can drain this now since it's cooked. And we're going to drain it so we can put it in the Brunswick stew.
Good. This is another instance where you wish you had smell-o-vision, because it also smells really good in here. Because Mary did go ahead and pre-make some Brunswick stew that's over there in that crock pot waiting on us to eat it.
Because we knew how the stove was.
Because we knew how the stove was. And also because it does take a long time. She prefers to cook hers on the stove and then put it in the crock pot at least overnight, if not longer. Is that right, Mary?
And then you got to remember you have to have a big pot, because after you put all this stuff in there, it starts filling it up. But you can see it really hasn't even started cooking, because it'll change colors. It'll get more prettier orange, I guess you'd say, or whatever the color the tomato is. But you just do it like that. And you don't have to put as many potatoes in there. That's also your preference. But another thing too, once it starts cooking, those potatoes will cook down. They'll be even smaller. I don't like them being big and chunky, because to me, you get more potato, and you know, but they flavor their own self being in there cooking as long as it does.
And then our potatoes, our tomatoes, and our corn all came from a local farm in Midway called Futch Farms.
Right.
So we got some left over here, and of course there's no bell peppers or jalapenos in our Brunswick stew, but he was kind enough to bring us some other fresh ingredients that we'll be using this weekend for 4th of July. And they are working on getting their U-Pick status, or to become a U-Pick farm. So they'll be part of Georgia Agritourism, so you'll be able to go out and pick your own vegetables, hopefully next year.
Now I'm going to go ahead and open up the little peas.
And those that just joined us on Periscope, this is Brunswick stew that we're making.
And I'm going to drain the peas.
I was wondering about that pea juice. I was wondering if it was going to go in that pot.
No, the pea juice does not go in the pot. And if you get cans of whole kernel corn, I drain that also.
Just made you say pea juice.
Pea juice. Okay, then all you do is you just stir it in.
You kind of fold them so they don't break.
Right. Once I get the peas in there, I try not to stir it a whole lot, but like I said, you need to really watch it so you don't scorch it.
And it starts bubbling up from underneath, then you need to turn the heat down.
Right, once it starts. But I know one thing, it will scorch just like that.
And then what happens? You have to start over again?
Start all over again.
That sounds like you might have experience with that.
Pretty much. A scorched Brunswick stew is not a good thing at all. But after it's all done, it will look like that.
Yum.
And see, you can see how the tomatoes have cooked in, and you see the orange of the
barbecue and the tomatoes.
We've got somebody asking on Periscope, how much does it cost to make?
Well, it's not real expensive. When you get you a Boston butts vary depending on what size you get, you know, $10, $15. And then, you know, your potatoes, they don't cost that much. And then your cans, say 2 big cans of the tomato diced and 1 little can. and then you get your cream corn and your whole kernel corn and your peas. It wouldn't cost you
$30 maybe.
right.
Yeah.
The reason the dish started, just for the benefit of the person that asked, is because in the South we don't like to waste anything.
That's right.
In the 20s and 30s, when the Depression was going on and people had a whole lot of children, they would use the meat as leftovers to continue to feed their families. So they used ingredients that were locally sourced and that were inexpensive.
And you can feed a lot of people.
Oh yes.
That is a big crock pot.
Yes, it is. I ripped it off from my son Joey. It's a family affair.
So remind us of everything we have in there, Mary. Let's run back through the ingredients.
Okay, I chopped up a good onion, which if you want to saute it, saute it. I had
And you
like
did saute yours.
yes,
And you sauteed it in butter.
yes,
Okay.
and you know where it's translucent, I guess you say. And then I put in the meat,
Which you got.
which I already had a big old gallon bag of it, and I put that in there, and then I put the tomatoes in there that's already ground up, and then you stir it around, and then you put your 2 cans of cream corn and either fresh whole kernel corn off the cob, which if you do corn on the cob, an easy way to do it is if you get a paper towel and wet it and wrap it around and it's not shucked. Put it in the microwave for like 2 minutes, and the silks will come off and it will shuck real easy. It's very hot, you know, but other than that, and then you can just cut it off. But you'll need quite a few ears to do
Probably
that.
about 8 or so.
Right. But then you put your whole kernel corn in there, and then you let your potatoes cook that's diced and in the water to save you time. And then at the very last, you put in your little English peas or sweet peas.
Little sweet peas.
And all I do is put a little bit of salt in it, just a taste. But that's it. And let it cook till it gets to what you want it to taste like.
Very cool.
Very nice.
So
I'm sorry.
after we get to the part where we're in the pot, you would let this come to a slow boil.
Right.
Brunswick Stew.
You let it come up where you'll see it boiling just a little bit, and then you'll just turn it down.
And how long will you leave it on the stove?
This will probably stay on the stove for a couple of hours before I put it in the crock pot.
And then you put it in the crock pot on low for
Yes.
how long?
When I did it last night, I put it in the crock pot. I let it cook on the stove maybe an hour and a half to 2 hours, to where you've seen it's just cooking good, and it's cooked down some, because of course it would overflow if you didn't. But then I put it on low, and before I went to bed I turned it on warm, and it still cooked, and it was all night long.
And it's been cooking all day.
Yeah, but it's still on warm. So, but it's really good like that. I like it like that. But I hope y'all enjoy it, and I hope you
Make some Brunswick stew this weekend?
Yes, it's real easy to do. But anyway, I hope y'all enjoy it.
Exactly. All right. Well, thank you so much, Mary. We appreciate it. And like she said, we hope y'all enjoy this recipe and try it for yourself. We will hopefully be able to put this up on our YouTube channel. Just look for us, Liberty County Convention and Visitors Bureau. This is also on our Facebook page. So go to Liberty CVB there, and you can see this video. Thanks so much for watching.
Erica Smith said, good job, Mary.